Hello, welcome to this presentation for the Greater New York Dental Meeting. I hope everybody's doing well in this time of the pandemic. Unfortunately, the meeting has to be a virtual meeting, but again, always the Greater New York Dental Meeting is a good meeting. My name is Marcos Vargas. I am a dentist, professor at the University of Iowa. I've been working here at the university as a teacher for a little more than 25 years, 27 years, I believe. Enjoy dentistry always, and my area of expertise, or what I teach at the school, is direct resin composites, operative dentistry in general, restorative dentistry, aesthetic dentistry. Today we'll be talking about improving your resin composites. So what I want to give you is a actually, what we're going to do today is this is going to be a two-part lecture. The first part is 10 minutes about some cases before and after cases that I want to show. Can I show the importance of resin composites and make and blend disappear? And the second one is going to be a demonstration. I think, particularly myself, I learn by watching. When I see somebody doing this, when I learn. And I think most of us as dentists, that's the way we learn. So I kind of decided to do a little lecture, but I do a demo. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do a class 4, a deep class 4, a subgingival, and how you elevate the margin and you keep going and make it divided and make it a little bit better. So I'm going to start with a little lecture, like I said before. So let me share my keynote presentation here. In a second. Here it goes. So anterior composites improve your daily success. As a matter of disclosure, I have received, collaborated, and support from dental manufacturers throughout my career, whatever is clinical studies, whatever is the helping to develop new materials or testing materials. I have a close relation with several, probably all dental manufacturers in the United States and abroad too. So that's my disclosure. Today, I'm going to tell you what I know, what I believe, and what I do in my practice every day, pretty much. It's also, I'm going to tell you what we teach at the University of Iowa, what we teach at grad and undergrad students. All the cases you are going to be seeing are cases in my private practice. I'm lucky that I have a microscope that I can take photographs and document most of the cases that I do. There is no alteration of any of the dental work, meaning Photoshop. The dentistry has not been altered whatsoever. Unfortunately, because it's a virtual meeting, we won't have question and answers. But I want to give you my email, just in case you want to have any questions, please feel free to reach to me. My email is marcos-vargas@uiowa.edu. MARCOS-Vargas, VARGAS @UIowa.edu. You can search in the web and probably my email will come up too. So again, sometimes it takes me a little while to answer, but I answer, right? To me, is the most important thing when I teach, when I do a lecture and do a demonstration, is to teach you something that you can use in your practice tomorrow. That's to me the key for my teaching. When I go to a meeting, if I learn a little nugget that I can apply in my practice, oh my God, it makes the meeting. So that's what again trying to transmit to you a little things that I can make yourself improve your dentistry for the benefit of yourself and your patients, of course. So let me show you some cases. This is a before picture of a young lady that comes to my practice. And she is not happy. The restoration was done recently, but she is not happy because she feels that it looks dark. Now, we say it looks dark, and yes, it looks a little dark, but more than dark, it's a matter of translucency or opacity of the material. So it's important for us as a dentist to know that materials comes in different opacities, not only in different shades like A1, B1, C1, but a lot of manufacturers, they make materials in which they have different opacities. So they have enamel-like materials and they have dentin-like materials. Like the dentin-like materials tend to be opaque like dentin. enamel-like materials tend to be more translucent like enamel, right? So in these type of materials, what you end up doing is creating the core made of dentin and overlaying with an enamel, right? There are also materials that are made that are not enamel-like or dentin-like, but they're kind of in between, right? So just to give you an example, for example, Filtech Supreme Ultra comes in dentin, enamel, and then also come in a body appearance that is not dentin, not enamel. It's kind of in between for the people that doesn't layer, that only does single opacity, correct? Because again, not in ordinary practice, not all of us can do every case with layering. Depends on your practice. And also materials comes in very, very translucent, like incise-alike, translucent type materials to imitate the very translucent edges on some teeth. So in this case, it's not a matter of shade selection, but it's a matter of opacity selection. Somebody choose a material that was too translucent. Somebody probably did an enamel-like material instead of doing more like a body-like material, intermediate, or layering with dentin and enamel. Because this patient was highly study motivated, after this occurred, what we did is layer restoration. We did a dentin inside to block the light going through, and then we layered with an enamel-like material. This happens to be Filtech Supreme Ultra. And it's a dentin in the core, it's an enamel in the outside. Just to, again, the dentin blocks the light, and the enamel allows the light to go slightly through, so it gives you the natural appearance of a tooth. This is another case, and I think resin composite is idea. She comes because somebody wanted to do a veneer on her. That's what the mom said, and came for a second opinion. So what we did here is just adding a little composite, and again, disappear blends really well. And that's the ability of these materials. They have the ability to disappear into the structure. This is a case that if I show you, some of you might say, I'm going to do a crown, I'm going to do a porcelain veneer, I'm going to do a resin composite, and I think different alternatives that we can provide to the patient. In this case, we decided to do a resin composite let me tell you why. This is a young patient, 12 years old. So we don't want to really do a crown. I think, in my opinion, it's maybe too early to do it. Again, I don't think all those choices are bad, but my particular preference is to start with composite instead of something more aggressive. So we did some internal bleaching, some external bleaching, because mom is the one that wants the best for his son, for her son. So that's what we did: internal bleaching, external bleaching, and a little resin composite. So again, they can disappear, they can last, they can blend, they can last for a long time. Minor augmentations, I think resin composites work really well. Somebody can say, hey, I'm going to do a porcelain veneer there, and absolutely right. There is nothing wrong with that. In this case, again, in my patients in Iowa, I don't have a lot of the luxury of my patients don't have the luxury of everything doing porcelain veneers. So I want to offer something that looks good and provide a lot of service and give us some aesthetic results, like in this particular case of those augmentation of those laterals. Minor arrangements, minor additions, I think the best is resin composites. So you can add a little bit to enhance the smile. In this case, a little bit of black triangle, thinning of the incisal edges, closing small diastemas. I think these are things that resin composite shine and work really well. This particular patient came to me. Actually, she's a dentist, and she doesn't want a crown because she wants to maintain as much to the structure as she can. And we did a resin composite. Eventually, they will fail. We'll maybe do a porcelain veneer in that time, but she's young. She doesn't want her enamel gone as a dentist, right? If I cases like this, I definitely want to do it in porcelain veneers. If this patient is unhappy about the appearance of the anterior teeth, so gee, I don't want to. I will do porcelain veneers in this case. Maybe in those canines that they have recessions, I will do some kind of a graft, but the patient is not interested in any grafts. So, my suggestion was porcelain veneers, maybe some bleaching, some porcelain veneer, and she financially couldn't do it. And I'm hesitant doing these cases because they are very large, and take time to do them. But my mentor did this case like 20 years ago, so it's kind of like I wanted to do it. And the price that I charge is half of the porcelain veneer, right? So for the Midwest, maybe, you know, it's 1,000 for a porcelain veneer. But, you know, for something like that, I charge maybe 500, half the price. And it takes me about a couple of hours or less to do all this. And so it becomes really profitable to me to do cases like that. Again, I have a little more experience doing these cases. I would necessarily say, everybody, just go ahead and do a case like that, but just kind of show the potential the resin restorations have, right? Again, my preference would be porcelain veneers, believe me. And that's kind of the result for her. A close magnification, very nice, smooth, shining. I will show you how to polish things like that and go from there. And she is quite happy after that. How long do I expect it to last? Very long time. I have patients more than 20 years with direct veneers, and still they're happy about it. And the literature, of course, will tell us that restorations can last for a very, very long time. This is a patient that I did early in my career. I have got great mentors through my career, and that I went through a grad program again. Dr. Jerry Dennehy, my mentor. So I did this case, immediately photos, immediate before and after, as you can see. And the picture to the right is a case after 10 years, I think it is. I've been following this patient for years. So this is 15 years after. And, you know, 15 years, if you get that result from your composite restorations, I'm happy. 15 years is a long time, all right? So I tell my patients, how long do I tell them? 8 years or something like that, 8 to 10 years, I say in the base case scenario. But again, if the patient has a good occlusion, because occlusion is so important, right? I would not say that every patient will be able to keep it for that long, but occlusion is primordial. And of course, how do they take care of it, right? So 15 years, I think is pretty good time. Now unfortunately, she started doing some external bleaching for her own. And this is 18 years later, right? And then she keeps coming, and again, you notice she's doing some bleaching. The lateral is starting to look, the composite also is starting deteriorating a little bit. And this is 22 years later. And this is the last photograph that I have of her 25 years later. So do they last? Yes. Again, based on occlusion in how they treat it. Of course, they don't look as good, but they can, again, resin lasts for a long time, the main point, and right? So after I show you these cases, you say, oh my God, you know what? Yeah, sure. Yeah, you have beautiful before and afters. Seems like you guys in Iowa do good. Now teach me, of course, and that's what I'm here for. So you can ask me, what do I need to know? And I think we need to know as a dentist, 3 main areas. We need to know to the structure, right? We need to know what are we replacing? We're replacing enamel and dentin. So ideally, aesthetically, when we replace to the structure, we need to replace it with a dentin-like material in the inside and an enamel-like material in the outside. Right? Ideally, that's kind of in an ideal world, that's what we like to do. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often because sometimes insurance or patient economics, we cannot do layering. And because I do believe layering, the patient needs to pay a little extra for our work that we do, that we learn to do. So to the structure, it's very important. Then we need to know the materials. We need to know the materials they are going to use to replace to the structure. Again, shade is important. How to select a shade, we'll look at them. I'll show you how to select a shade very efficiently. The materials, again, is a dentin, it's an opacity, what opacity it is enamel, is intermediate, it's a body type material. You know, so those are things that we need to understand. We also need to understand that the opacity changes from material from company A to company B, but also the translucency changes, the shade and the opacity, all those things change. So it's a matter of get familiar with your material. I will say, to me, the most important characteristic of the material is the way it handles. If it handles the way I like it, then it's going to work for me. I can make it work in my hands. So I tell people that the first thing you need to do is find a material that you like it, how it handles. Then get used to that material. And we need to know the techniques, how to use these materials to replace to the structure. So today we're going to talk a little bit about techniques, right? And the technique that I'm going to show you is a technique that I use with materials that they are not sticky, non-slamping, waxy like, that I can give it a shape and they don't change the shape. That to me is quite important. And again, the technique that I'm going to show you today works for this, for the materials that I'm going to use today, they work with the technique. Not every material will work with this technique, but a lot of them will. Something like a Filtered Supreme Ultra work really well, and that's the material we'll use today. Something like Evanes from Clinician's Choice will work really well. Stellite Omega from Tokuyama will also work well, and Empress D.D.S Direct from Ivoclar also will work well, in this case with this technique. So now I'm going to start sharing the case that we're going to do today. So this is the case we're going to do today. This case happens to be, let me show you here, the case that I'm going to demonstrate. It's going to be a large class 4. And what I thought about it is, what am I going to do here, right? What I want to teach people. And I thought, you know what, there's a lot of times that when I'm doing a class 3, right, restoration that tends to be very large, that is possibly is large. Let's say you have a large class 3 here, and then it's starting to get deep, infragingival, and all of a sudden breaks, right? And then large class 3 becomes a class 4. So how do we do this? And that's kind of what I want to kind of teach you how to do it today, right? So first, we're going to do a little shade selection, all right? And I have here a shade guide with me, and this shade guide, as you can see it, let me get back a little bit here. It's arranged by A, B, C's, and D's, correct? And this is what we do. We go here to A1, but then the other one is a B1, and then we keep jumping. Which one is the best? So maybe an A2 or maybe a B2. And all of a sudden, after a while, every shade looks the same, correct? And then we know that it's not right. So first, I want to give you a tip here. The best way for you to arrange your shade guide is by perceived light to dark, because it's much easier to select your shade. And at the same time, when you are doing this, you are going to be able to do this by a process of elimination. So a process of elimination, because what we know is that we only have 16 choices, right? 16 colors. Or, well, if we have bleach shades, we have 3 more, OM1, OM2, OM3. So we have 19 possible shades. What we know is that teeth come in millions of colors, infinite number of colors. So what we need to do then is the easiest way to me is by doing the process of elimination. Meaning, when I look at this, I'm going to close my eyes for 2-3 seconds, and then I'm going to run it like this, right? When I run it like this, immediately I know that this is not in this side, really is in this side, correct? So I close my eyes again, and again, remember, this is a process of elimination. So I already eliminated all these from the shade guide because I know all these are too dark. So I might say, oh, I know it's pretty light. So I'm going to select maybe 3 or 4, right? Or 3, let's say 3. Close your eyes for a second, or 3 seconds, let your eye rest, because your eyes needs to rest. So close your eyes and open your eyes and tell me which one is the worst out of the 3. Well, immediately everybody's going to say, this is the worst of the 3, right? So I'm going to eliminate it. Now I'm going to be left with these 2, correct? And you say, well, which one it is? Let me try to figure out which one it is. Don't try to figure it out yet. Close your eyes again. Wait 3 seconds, open it up, and immediately, which one is the worst? Well, hard to tell still, right? But I do believe that the worst is A1. So what I selected is not a perfect match. Look at that, right? Maybe a little brighter, but if I do OM3, too bright. So I need to stay with B1, correct? So even though it's not the perfect match, it's the closest match you have in your shades. So then I'm going to use B1 to restore this class 4, right? But I want to make it difficult for myself, because let's say that in my office, I run out of B1, and then I only have A1 in my office, and the patient, I need to do something, correct? And I know my shade is a little off because I make a good choice, but I am off, right? So what do we do? How do we make sure that a composite that is not a perfect match, and even one shade each side, how do we make sure that blends? Well, let's talk about cavity preparation. When I prepare this stud, what I'm going to do is I need to do bevels, because the bevel is the one that is going to allow me to, let me zoom in here. By doing bevels, the bevels is going to allow me to do that disappearing effect. So let's discuss a little bit the bevel. We have a facial bevel and we have a lingual bevel. The facial bevel is an aesthetic functional bevel. So that bevel has certain characteristics compared to the lingual bevel. But in this case, right, so I remove the decay and I try to stay, clean margins, supragingival, but again, in this case, it's infragingival. So I am not going to bevel down here, just leave it clean. The lingual bevel is basically a bevel very short, and it's just to maybe clean and leave a nice, smooth area for bonding, just to expose the enamel rods. So in the lingual, I will do a bevel pretty much like this. You can see right there. That's pretty much my bevel, very small, just kind of cleaning and exposes the end of the enamel rods. All right. So in the facial, this is when things are much different. I am using a flame finishing or a, it's a diamond. So look what I do. I do a much longer bevel, right? So I'm doing a much longer bevel. But when I'm doing this bevel, I'm doing this bevel in this way, but also, you see how my burr moves? So the internal angle is kind of round and keeps going. It's about 2 to 3 millimeters in length. And you see what I'm doing right there? Something like that. That's the whole idea with this bevel. Again, look how I move my diamond, right? Almost parallel to the front of the tooth, and then inclines, 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 and leaves me an internal round line angle. So the idea is when you put your denting increment or your blocking increment, it goes all the way to the front, to the bevel. I'll show you that, correct? So let me dry this. And this is about as long as I want that bevel to be, right? It's about 2 to 3 millimeters. Sometimes also I like to do kind of scalloping bevel, because the human eye tends to see a straight line better. So you can see it maybe a little longer here. It's a little rounder. That's really what I want to do. And sometimes even what I will do is grab a disc, a Soflex disc, and just kind of go around the edge. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to do it this time. So right now it's bleeding down there. We are deep. We're just kind of panicking a little bit at that point. The worst thing you can do is panic, right? So we're going to do this class 4 by part. So the first we're going to do is we are going to place a matrix, right? And of course, what we want to do is stop the bleeding, right, immediately. So what do? We do kind of pack a piece of cord, grab a piece of cord, right? And not necessarily pack it, but you can kind of floss it in. That's kind of the easiest way to put it in, right? Once you do that, you can apply any astringent solution, probably something that kind of stop it. You can probably inject maybe a little bit with Lido that has epinephrine, which stop a little bit of the bleeding too. Those are the things that I will do. And then I want to place my matrix, right? Because if I start trying to build this tooth like this, it's not going to work. So because it's too deep, and then that's what happened, right? It's very deep, and then we just kind of shove the composite in there and doesn't work really well. So what I'm going to do is place my matrix all the way down there, right? Like you can see it as far as you can put it. Now, again, because you have the cord, there is no bleeding anymore. Again, stop the bleeding. So now I'm going to etch, right? I will etch, you know, because I'm kind of I like to etch, especially the enamel. You can etch, you're using something like a universal adhesive, a Scotch Bond, Universal Plus in this case. So I am going to definitely etch my enamel, correct? So I etch my enamel, and then I'm going to dispense a little drop of the adhesive, correct? Then in a situation like this, I may use rinse dry, I may use a little brush. Why a brush? Is because, again, to get in there is much easier with the brush than if I use a micro brush. So my assistant has brushes and micro brushes. So I'm going to rub it into the dentin at least for 20 seconds, apply it into the enamel, right? And then I'm going to dry. So I'm going to use my air and I'm going to dry. When I dry this, I am not aggressively drying at the beginning. I'm lightly drying it because I don't want to push it out of the way, my adhesive. So you see how I'm moving and increasing the pressure? Now I can increase the pressure to dry my adhesive. It's not necessarily drying it, right? What we're doing is evaporate the solvent that is present in all adhesives. So now I'm going to go ahead and polymerize. You know, I'm going to polymerize probably for 10 seconds from the facial, and then I'm going to polymerize 10 seconds from the lingual, right? And once you kind of polymerize, kind of this tends to kind of hold the vein a little bit better, right? So you also can hold it like this. If I try to put composite into my area right there, it's going to be quite hard to do it because even though if I'm using a compule, trying to get there is going to be difficult. So one of the things that I do is I kind of hold it, and I'm going to use a flowable material to build it up, to kind of elevate the margin. So we're going to be using Filtex Supreme Flow Restorable. And remember, I'm going to use A1 because I didn't have B1, correct? Doesn't matter, you'll see how it blends. So I'm going to use a little bit of the material and really put it all the way at the bottom, like that. And you see what I'm doing? I'm kind of keeping the tip buried on the material. Why? Because if I don't do that, I'd probably be likely to incorporate bubbles, correct? So now by doing that, I have built up that margin. Now it's going to, instead of being an infragingival margin, it's a supragingival margin, right? I'm going to, like you're still holding it, right? Go from the lingual, 10 seconds from the facial, 10 seconds from the lingual. I want to make sure that it's nice and polymerized. And then look at this. Now this restoration has become supragingival, right? And the best part is like when I wanna take this tooth out and kind of demonstrate a little bit how smooth is this. Look at that. Because you kept your matrix when you're building it up, tends to be nice and smooth and you don't get any overhangs. So that's the way I do my deep class 3s and my class 4s. Look at that, right? So I just build the gingival, right? I have a little more in the palatal and it'd be okay, right? So now it becomes a more manageable class 4. Instead of having that difficulty at the gingival margin, now it's much easier. Now my life is not complicated, right? In some cases, you know, like this is a case that became a class 4, right? We described it was deep. We didn't think it was going to be a class 4. It's a class 3. Because if you are in aesthetic dentistry, probably you've seen the technique that you have to have matrix so you can build your tooth right there. But again, this doesn't happen all the time. Most of the time, we don't have that, all right? And I did take the matrix because I wanted to take the tooth and show you how smooth it was. In reality, I wouldn't have taken my strip. So see if I can put it back, right? See if it goes back. Yeah, it went back. I would have kept it, right? And then I am going to start building from the lingual to the facial. So what am I going to do? Let me show you this, right? What I do is, I'm sure you noticed, right? These materials, this is Filtech Supreme Ultra A1 enamel that I'm going to use first because it's the lingual side, enamel, dentin enamel, or enamel, body enamel. You can use that combination too. So remember when you're doing increments, kind of in between the increments a little bit, you have this porosity in between. You take a radiograph, there's porosity. Let me show you this. You will put a little bit of that flowable like that, right? Look at this, just a little bit. Why? Because now holding this, I am going to inject my enamel material into it. Right, look at that. And it's going to displace my flowable, correct? And, but it's going to help me with adaptation. You see right here, and you can see the flowable coming out right there. So I displace it, take it out, right? So that assures me that I have a nice contact between the layers, all right? So I'm going to grab this, and at the same time, another trick that I can give you here is push the material so you get your contact, because you want to get your contact with this enamel-like material. You see, get in the back right here. The back, I mean the palatal, right? So I want to cradle that matrix like that. Remove any excess. You can use a thin bladed instrument like this to clean the excess right there, right? And I always like to use a brush. And with the brush, I like to smooth it, right? So then once it's nice and smooth, and the length, I create the length. If it's a little longer, don't even worry about it. Just leave it longer because it's easy to remove. Then I'm going to light cure, 10 seconds from the facial, 10 seconds from the lingual, right? And then pretty much, if I remove my matrix, I already have pretty much almost my class 4 done. If I'm using a single shade or a body-like material, I will pretty much build the whole half of the lingual, and then in the second increment, the rest of the facial. But because I'm being a little more aesthetic in this case, and to block the light, I am going to change, and I'm going to use a body-like material. This is the intermediate opacity, Filtech Supreme Ultra. You see the nomenclature. This one is enamel, A1 enamel, and this one A1B for body. The most opaque material is called A1D for dentin. All right, so I'm going to use a body because I want to block some of the light, so I don't want to see the background. So immediately I'm going to, one of the things also what I do is another trick. Never use that first part of the tip because, you know, in composites, it dries up, right? And again, you can do the same trick again. You can put a little flowable right there, like I'm doing like this. So what? So it wets, and when I put my next increment, it's really adapted really well. You can see that. And what you notice that I'm doing is I'm keeping this more opaque material basically in the bevel, not over the bevel. You see that my bevel is a long bevel, and I don't want to keep it all the way there. I'm going to take it away, right? I'm going to grab my brush, and my brush is going to smooth it. And also my brush is going to remove any flowable that is being extruded when you do this. Look at this, right? And how far into the bevel? Probably halfway into the bevel is that how far I have my body material to block, stop the light from going through. And you look from the inside, so I still have room to place my facial enamel. Again, we're trying to do a little cosmetic here, right? So I'm good there, and then I'm going to light cure. And what I'm doing with my assistant is the one that light cures it. So I already taught her a lot of the principle of how to do this, and you know, set the light and don't let it drift. I'm using a part of a good light. Of course, there's a lot of good lights in the market. This happened to use them. I'm using the Valo Grand. That's a very good light, but there's a lot of good lights in the market out there. So I am going to do my final layer now. So my final layer, what it is enamel, correct? So what I want to do for this, I want to put back my mylar strip. Not the way, maybe not all that deep, because what I want to do again is place a little bit of my flowable, just a little dab right there, like this. And then what you do is you go back to your enamel-like material, my A1 enamel, correct? So even though it's a B1, we selected B1, but we're out of luck. We don't have B1 in the office. It could happen, right? But most important is I want to show you how, by doing that bevel that we did, it blends really nicely. So we're going to inject a little material right there, like this, right? Then I'm going to grab my thin-bladed instrument, right? Like this. I love this instrument. This instrument happens to be from Ellen Dental. It's LMART Applica by Style Italiano, which I'm a member of Style Italiano too. Great group of people just dedicated to teaching too. So I'm going to pad my restoration. And another thing that I like to do when I'm working in composite resins, my assistant has a alcohol gauze, all right? And the alcohol gauze, she has wringed it out. So there is just, it's kind of a little wet. Yeah, see how I'm eliminating most of the excess? And with that, I'm going to wipe my fingers, correct? By wiping my fingers and then drying them, I am going to be able to use my fingers to move to tap on my restoration. Look at this. You will have a good fitting glove and you can push it. So you see how it immediately gets a nice shape. And I'm going to push the material against the matrix, right? Extend it and blend it over the bevel like this. And then I'm going to pull my matrix towards the lingual, right? And then with my brush, again, I am going to brush excess flow that I might have. And you know what is? Look at that. It's a little longer, but doesn't matter, right? Because that's easy to fix. So make sure that you have a nice margin. That's also important, that when you grab your margins right here, they blend really nicely, like this, like that. And then you can even tap it in a little bit. So when you polish, it's much easier. Any excess, I'm going to remove it like this. Make sure that I have the right length, about, right? Brush it once more, just to make sure that it's nice. You know, also you could use something like a wetting resin. This happens to be a resin blend from Clinician's Choice. This is another one, composite wetting resin from Ultradent. And so you can put a little bit on the brush just to primer, right? This is maybe too much, just to primer. so the material doesn't stick to the instrument. Now, this material, you notice, never did stick to the instrument, but some materials will. Maybe Empress Direct will stick a little bit. Just to smooth it, just like that, right? Trying to give the shape. If I look from the incisal, ooh, look at that. I don't have necessarily the very good shape. My embrasure is not very good, so I'm going to push it, and then it's getting a little much better. Push it a little bit more. Nice, my embrasure. I have a little excess in the lingual. I'm going to clip it off, right? And I'm going to licure. So go ahead, do licuring. Again, my assistant is doing the licuring as close as you can to it. Licure, and pretty much you are ready to go. Some people will put glycerin on top, so there's no oxygen inhibitor layer. What I do is wipe it with alcohol gauze, and then the oxygen inhibitor layer disappear, all right? So now I'm ready to polish, correct? And I usually use a step-by-step approach to polishing. I use 10 steps, all right? And I'll demonstrate the 10 steps. And the 10 steps are based on anatomy, all right? So what I'm going to do here is polish my restoration. So that all the steps that I use, I will tell you. First step is when I'm working with length, okay? So I'm going to switch here to my slow speed. And then I'm going to use my disc. And I like a large disc, but I don't like the very coarse disc. I don't like the red disc or the Soflex. I like the dark orange, I call it. And then I'm going to go up very low RPMs, maybe 3,000-4,000 RPMs. And then I use my adjacent tooth to modify the length. You see that? Right? Use the adjacent tooth to create my length. Number one. So now we work on the length anyway before, right? But number two, so one length. Number two, incisal facial line angle. So I'm going to grab a pencil, any shade, and I'm going to grab and mark my adjacent teeth, the incisal facial line angle, where the incisal meets the facial. And then I'm looking from the occlusal. And you can see, well, this tooth, I moved it before, but mine maybe a little farther out. So it's just farther out, I can grab my Soflex again and bring it down, right? I love the Soflex for contouring. I don't necessarily like them to use all the steps, but some people love them, and then they can go all the way with the Soflex. I kind of like rubber cups a little bit better. So at the same time, here I am concerned about the shape of the class 3. So I want to look at from the incisal. You see how it rolls in my class 4 and is disappearing in the adjacent tooth. Remember, it's the wrong shape, but it still is going good. So interproximally now, so if, remember, we use a mylar strip, so we don't have any excess, but maybe here there is some excess, and it's really good to use a Bart Parker number 12 blade to maybe clean any excess that you might have. I don't have any excess anywhere on the lingual or on the facial, so I'm not worried about that. So number 3 is going to look the profile. So when I look at this adjacent tooth, I see that this is it's round here. So I want to make sure that my class 4 also follows it round. It seems like I have it. Again, it wasn't that large of a class 4, so it's okay. If I don't have a very good contour, I will go ahead and smooth it to get number 4, line angles. What does it mean? My line angle is where the facial meets the interproximal. So I will mark the adjacent tooth if I can. And this is what a normal tooth would mark. And my line angle is right there. So my line angle, my embrasure or line angle is a little too close, right? You notice? My line angle should be, let me change colors. My line angle should be a little more like in there, right? Like here. So what I need to do is open it up. How I do open it up? Again, my Soflex. I'm going to go with my Soflex and open it. See, taking from where my red mark was, taking a little bit, soften my line angle, and you can come back and mark it again, and all of a sudden it's exactly where you want it. Number 6 is embrasures. So my embrasure, I think, is looking pretty good. The facial incisal embrasure is looking here. It's the same. I don't have to worry about it. Again, my Soflex will be the one that I will use to fix the embrasure. Number 6 is point angle. What point angle means? Point angle means is where the incisal facial line angle and the line angle and the embrasure meet in one point. So they in reality they're not necessarily meeting in one point right there. So I'm going to come back with my Soflex and go right there until they meet in one point, like the adjacent tears. Good. Number 7 is inclination, axial inclination, but there is no axial inclination because a class 4 I restore a class 4, and I'll be near, I'll be looking for axial inclination. Number 8 is texture and a macro anatomy, but there's not a little macro anatomy here. So what I'm going to do is a little macro anatomy here, right? You want to paint a little bit where you want your depression. So usually the mesial depression is slightly longer and narrower, and the distal depression is a little wider, right? So I'm just going to do a little depression in the mesial just to show you how I do this in case you need it. In our case, we don't need it. This is I'm using a fine diamond 888 Brasseler 888 or Comet. They're a really good boat. And then I'm going to maybe go ahead and create my depression. Right, see what I'm doing? Just touch, 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 like that. Let me give you another tip when you're doing this. Remember that alcohol gauze? Keep it right there because when you wet it, you can see, look at that, where I put my depression? And you can blend it a little bit better. If you are going to do something like this, right? So number 8 is texture. And number 9 is texture imbrication lines. Sometimes there is imbrication lines, but that more is for a veneer than for a class 4. So there's a little excess right there. Just like that. Don't stay in one place because it really will make a deeper groove. And then finally, I'm going to apply some gloss to it. All right. So I'm going to go with a couple of steps and maybe a polishing paste in some cases. I might use this polishing paste in this case. So I'm going to go with my rubber cup, a medium rubber cup, and the speed is so important. I am using right here a electric hand piece. This happens to be a BNR. It's a workhorse, you know, that's what we use at the school. We really, really love it. And I'm going to go and polish. Right, just light touches, light touches. Light touches, light touches, light touches. Ah, look at what is happening there. Very nice, it's just starting to shine, right? So I'm going to switch to my finer diamond cup, diamond impregnated cup. And getting into the groove. Look at that. And we are getting this restoration to blend really nicely. And again, what did I say, right? This material, again, because we use enamel-like material and bevels, they tend to disappear really, really nicely. Again, in alcohol cleaning, right? You can go with floss. Interproximally, I like to use these Epitech strips. I will use a blue first, and then I will use a green one to go the steps. And then finally, I'm going to go maybe with a polishing paste, something like enamelized works. I kind of favor a little bit of the diamond polishing paste, right? So I'm going to use a little bit. right? So I'm going to squeeze a little bit. Hopefully I don't squeeze too much. Yeah, maybe I squeeze too much. Anyway, what you want to put is just a little dot like this. Just a little dot. Increase your speed to about 8,000 RPMs. And just go touch, 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 touch. Maybe go up to 12,000. And then when I'm doing this, I am also doing the adjacent tip. Right? And you can see the high shine that I did. Let me see if I can find a piece of floss here. So just to show you interproximally. So here's my floss. I am going to, again, look at this. See, I create a contact. There is a contact point. And you can go up and down in a C shape. And when you bring it up, doesn't thread the floss. That's when you know that you've done a good job interproximally and you don't have any excess. So it's a deep class 4, like you encounter sometimes, and we were able to do it breaking down in parts, so you really can do a very good job. Kind of like the Roman principle of divide to conquer, right? The Roman principle that when they went to war, they divide the army so they can do it. So we use the same approach, right? We did this approach we had in different ways. We first elevated with a matrix. Now you like to keep a matrix there. Once you elevate it and like your flowable, you can push a wedge and just keep it there. So let's say that you put your wedge, your matrix, right? And then it's bleeding to the left, to the other side of the matrix. And then you cannot stop it. Just keep the matrix and just wedge it. And you see that will stop it and just keep building your class 4, right? Those are the things that I do that I encounter all the time. Again, my practice, this is what I do day in and day out. It's bread and butter and go from there, you know? I think we are getting towards the end of it. A little, have a few minutes, but so what other points I want to give you as many tips as I want. I think in an hour probably is not enough. I can talk to you composite for days. You will be bored with me talking about composite. Again, these matrices work really well. I'm using just an epitex strip, a mylar strip to do that. I also do the same technique in posterior. So you have a very deep posterior. I put a mylar strip. I don't put a wedge, just around it to hold it and just build it with the flowable. And that builds up the margin, right? Those are the things that I like to do when I'm doing these deep class 4s, deep class 3s, anterior restorations. And today also we went a little beyond and did not only one single shade, but we did 2 shades, right? Enamel in the outside and a little body in the inside to keep the core opaque so the light doesn't go through, only goes through to allow the blending. Again, these materials are so good if you do the bevel and you do an enamel on the top that allows the blending. Again, I select the big one, but I use A1, right? So to let you know that these things that we do, bevels and blending and things like that, are going to help you to make this composite resin disappears. All right. Again, if you have any questions, my email is Marcos, M-A-R-C-O-S hyphen Vargas, V-A-R-G-A-S @uiowa.edu. Again, stay well, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your meeting. And thank you very much for staying with me. Bye-bye.